Hello and welcome to today's special segment on AAU TV, where we delve into the Coalition for Digital Africa's initiative, specifically the ICANN-Managed root server, that is IMRS infrastructure. And it is important to note that the aim of this initiative is to bolster Africa's internet resilience, as well as to foster digital equity across the continent. And we are privileged to have here with us via Zoom, Mr. Pierre Dandjinou, who is the ICANN's Vice President of Stakeholder Engagement for Africa, as well as a key representative from the Coalition for Digital Africa. Hello, Mr. Dandjinou.
Hello.
You're welcome to this segment.
Thank you.
Before we start, I would like you to give us an overview specifically for the Coalition for Digital Africa's initiative. What is the mission and vision of this initiative, and why was it established?
Thank you very much for your question. But before I actually dwell into the the Coalition for Digital Africa, let me quickly say, what ICANN is about, so that you could better understand where the whole idea, vision and program is coming from. ICANN is the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Number. This is the corporation that really coordinates the internet, coordinate what we call those resources without which internet might not be really functioning. There are domain names, there are also IP addresses. So ICANN's remit is about, this what we just call the coordination of the internet, which also means is about the policy that concerns those resources. Having said that now, why the CDA, why the Coalition for Digital Africa? One of the things we noticed as ICANN was that it was important to consider the accessibility in Africa in a few places, in such a way that that encompass, all the infrastructure that you need. About, the cables, about the satellite, but there are also infrastructure that not many people really know or understand actually. Now, the CDA, the Coalition for Digital Africa, is how should I say, a group of like-minded institutions that are agreed to put together the efforts to boost, African connectivity and African infrastructure in terms of, accessibility to internet. So it's about inclusion also in Africa, but we are going to develop this one as we move on, to this presentation. But now the IMRS itself is a kind of one of projects under the coalition projects, okay? And that project we already started mentioning it is about, having ICANN-managed root servers in your country or in your region, so that you are able to kind of reduce latency. And by so doing, of course, keeping your local traffic kind of local, not really passing, outside sort of networks. And that's mostly what it's all about, this IMRS. But it comes at different categories.
I like the fact that you mentioned about the IMRS, but then how does it fit into the broader vision of the Coalition for Digital Africa?
Yes, as we said, the coalition, the purpose of the coalition is to contribute to boosting African connectivity, which means that, and that's where we are coming from, that boosting connectivity is not just about, the infrastructure that we know of, but we believe that you can also consider other infrastructure that are going to do one or two things for you, which is about, reducing the latency, meaning the time you spend, in expecting your query, to resolve. Once you pass through the servers, is definitely contribute to reducing this latency, thereby reducing even your cost, of accessibility. So all of these are important, and this is about, boosting the Africa digital development, which is, the overall vision and mission also of the coalition. Root servers there are 13 of them. ICANN-Managed one of them, which is the L root. And that's the one we are installing in different places in Africa. Well, we are already started, deploying this in different other places, actually, not just Africa. So when we mean the IMRS cluster or installation, then that's a much more kind of group of, servers that you put together. That's exactly what we put, in Kenya and also in Egypt. The interest of those, what you call cluster or installations, IMRS is that you can compare the way, before you establish those IMRS clusters in your country or your region, you could see the way traffic behave in terms of, for instance, today, we know that because we put this IMRS in Egypt and Kenya, at least 60% of African connection of traffic that were going outside of Africa are now in Africa, are now dealt in Kenya or in Cairo, which is quite important in terms of the gains that we have, in terms also of the security, of the infrastructure. And all of this is quite important.
Right. I see there are lots of benefits that is aligned with the development of Africa's digital sector or digital system. But then before we talk more on the IMRS singles, I know there was a phase one. Can you give us or talk more about the significance of the installation of the IMRS in these countries?
No, sure. In fact, like I told you, what it does basically is kind of reduce latency, meaning the time you'll be waiting, to get accessibility or to get a response to your query, for instance. We are seeing that local traffic, which is regional traffic, passing through this IMRS in, say, in Nairobi or in Egypt now, most of the traffic used to kind of go outside of Africa and back to Africa. Now, since resolvers now are there, in the servers that we have and can respond to your query, we are already seeing that we are reducing the latency thing. The other thing is that having those sort of installation in those places now is a kind of guarantee of the security of your data now being kind of, handled here in Africa, which is quite important also. So we are also talking about, the security, the integrity of all of these things. So it's quite important that you kind of, okay, you can say, keep the local sort of, data local or something like that. And that's quite important. This is something that normally people don't see. And that's the new thing that we are kind of bringing here, is how to kind of populate Africa with those IMRS. Either IMRS has installations as a single or IMRS, as a set of servers, because this is going to contribute to the overall, experience, the user's experience in terms of accessibility, which is quite important, Maybe question could be, why are we going through this? Because the DNS is key in terms of the accessibility of the internet. And we, as ICANN, of course, this is one of our remits to make sure that the DNS, works, functions, is secure, and the internet itself is really secure to you.
Now let's talk about your collaborations or partners to implement this initiative. I see you are collaborating, ICANN is collaborating with AAU. What role does AAU play in this?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. Yeah, like we said, this is a coalition for digital Africa. Coalition means actually that it's not just us as ICANN that are really implementing the different projects. Actually, right now we do have close to 7 projects. We have built a kind of partnership. Right now we have 12 partners, on the CD, on the coalition. Why the Association of African Universities? This is an association of African universities, which means that they do have networks. Now, if they are able now to help us, place those IMRS in the different places, in the different countries where they do have their network, this is always going to amplify, I would say, the whole sort of operation that we are trying to implement, which is about having IMRS in different places in Africa, in different countries. And the aim is always the same, actually. The aim is always to kind of reduce the latency, meaning the speed with which the traffic goes on is quite important. It is key that we understand there's speed, there's an issue of speed here. So if you might not need to go outside, pass into traffic, your traffic outside of Africa before coming to Africa. But having this, directly handled within Africa or within your country. Of course, you can couple this with internet exchange points, All of this actually have to beef up, to bolster connectivity in Africa. And that's what exactly the coalition is for. We also think that AU, with its network, is really going to benefit from this because, of course, they are going also to be able to support different nodes of the network, meaning the countries, different institutions that might be interested hosting, because they are hosters of those things. Of course, they also need to do some maintenance. It's not just about the equipment that we put there. They also have to take care of the maintenance, of the equipment and make sure that this really operates, on a regular basis.
Talking about hosting, I saw that you've opened a call for expression of interest for organizations to host the IMRS single. Can you take us through the eligibility criteria and also the benefits organizations are going to get from installing the IMRS singles?
Of course, the first criteria is already your interest for this thing. The second criteria is, of course, that you are able to either buy the equipment, because that comes with some equipment. It also is also going to come with your how should I say, your staff, members. But all of this is part of the interest, actually. Also about your possibility for maintaining, this thing in terms of, okay, may call it, energy, power, all of these things that we all know about, when you establish your networks, things like that. So what we are just asking them is to demonstrate that they can, of course, number one, host, and hosting meaning that is about a few sort of equipment that you put there. Not that much costly anyway. I would say the most important part of it now is going to be the maintenance, how you make sure that once you set up this equipment, you have these servers, working there. How long are you going to be able to maintain them, because these are equipment that you also need to replace, maybe coming 5 years or more than that. Now, what are they going to benefit from exactly? Same thing. The single one you put in a place in your country actually attract most of, the queries. So attract most of the traffic. So by doing so, you are already seeing the result that it's most of the traffic now is going to reside in your place, in your country. And that's what we are trying to do, meaning keeping your traffic local is certainly going to better your experience, your user experience. Meaning you might not be waiting so much to be downloading, your file. You might not waiting so much, for having the queries, solved, so that you do have, your results, in a few milliseconds. All of these are quite important. What is new here is to kind of understand that this is going to make a difference in your user's experience, and then go for it, implement it, maintain it, operate it and maintain it, and then to the benefit, of your community. I think that's exactly what it is about. And I think Association of Africa Union, they have understood what one could get from this IMRS.
You made mention that the cost involved is not that much, and that what is needed is the maintenance of the equipment needed. I also saw that there are some funding opportunities for organizations that are willing to host their appliances. How do they get access to these opportunities?
We know that the equipment should be coming around $5,000, for instance. That equipment might be over sort of cost related to this one. What we are kind of offering or suggesting here is that for this first batch, we are going to certainly, of course, provide all the details, meaning equipment could be refound or kind of in a few weeks' time. if a country or an institution is ready to factor in, the $5,000 sort of dollar, that's for the equipment. The project is going to refund. Because actually, we are aiming at having 10 of those new sort of IMRS. So those who qualify, definitely, we are going to refund, the $5,000 for the equipment, you see. So that's already interesting for them to now make sure that they do provide the rest in terms of, maintenance, eventually 1 or 2 staff, to take care of the whole, installation. But yes, for the first, batch, for the first, I would say part of the single MRS, definitely the project is going to refund, 5,000 per installation. Yeah.
Before the project ends, what are you hoping to achieve by June 2025? And also, how are you going to contribute to the development of Africa's digital system?
No, this is a good question, and also relate to exactly why, as kind of a coalition, we are operating in Africa. The objective for us is to contribute to actually, like I said, having increasing, the user's experience, meaning accessibility. It's quite important because that project, the CDA is about, supporting Africa in such a way that we could actually increase connectivity, reduce the digital divide, for instance. So your question is just about, how do we know that we are succeeding actually?
Yeah.
Like I've already demonstrated to you, the IMRS, be there installation cluster or the single ones, are here to make sure that you reduce your accessibility. I mean, the time of, accessibility to your queries, you reduce this time. It is important. It's number 2, it's also going to play on whatever, resources you are putting on accessibility. It's going to reduce it. And once you reduce such a thing, of course, you are actually offering a new sort of, a better user's experience. And that's what matters. Because once we're already doing this, having more and more people connected, and connected in a very kind of, what I might say, secure way, because the cluster also are there for kind of security of the whole system, then all of this user experience, boils down to increasing African overall, digital development, for sure. Because if you are having, and the most of the thing we are having within the CDA, say for instance, what we are calling universal acceptance, whereby we want people to be able to have their systems at par with, what the other system, and definitely making sure that Africa has a chance to also go for the new domain names, which is quite important, especially those what we call the IDN, internationalized domain names, which are those sort of new names that Africa could also request, say .adamawa, I don't know, or whatever, Nkrumah, whatever. I mean, experience are going to come. We call it DNSSEC road, which is we want file on the when you sign your zone file, it means that your destination is secure. And we are kind of supporting African countries in understanding how to do this. That's what we call the roadshow, because we do have workshops in different places where we train people how to secure the zone file. This is quite important. Now, today we have something like 8 to 8 African countries that have signed their zone file. What we are doing now, by end of 2025, we would like to be having 25 of them, sign their zone file, which is important out of 54 countries. This is going to be a great experience for Africa. Signing our zone file, meaning we are putting much more security, in our destination, meaning that we are already providing vast way of avenues for combating, for the cyber, security for combating threat. So all of these are quite important. So you have to put all of them together. In 1 year time, we will be able to demonstrate that, yes, Africa is making a kind of, there's a new sort of user experience here in terms of the way they access to the internet. For instance, we've launched and we are going to publish, a study on Africa's, domain name, meaning how much Africans are consuming domain names. What are they doing with the domain names? How best are they going to really work with the domain names? This is quite important. We believe that the CDA in 1 year's time or 1 or 2 years' time is already, we are already seeing some sort of, what I might call impact actually. But the impact will be greater, as long as we have enough sort of partners and as long as we are able to really operate those things on the ground. It's not easy, of course, but we also know that we'll be getting there since we do have partners also on the ground that as long as they understand where we are heading to, I think we normally are going to make a difference in the African digital development.
Great. Indeed, we are hoping to see these impacts. Now, before we wrap up, I know the deadline for the expression of interest is just around the corner. What will be your advice to organizations that are willing to apply, but, a bit skeptical?
Well, if it's about the IMRS, the single one, I would say there's not much, criteria, as I already said, because it's about hosting an equipment, it's hosting servers, and that are basically doing the following. Traffic is going to go through them. And then, of course, by so doing, we say you reduce, your latency, you ameliorate, your trafficking. All of those things are benefit for you. So if you believe that this is something your system is able to kind of host, go for it. We're also saying that for the first, bunch of countries, we are going to refund at least the $5,000, that they need for the equipment. Once they have the equipment, then the service, all of this is going to be about the maintenance, cost. So that's all. We are not really asking for so many of those criteria. Of course, people need more details, no problem. We are here to really, we are here for that. We'll be you can go via the Africa Association of Universities, for instance, or through ourselves as ICANN. Definitely will provide you with whatever information you need, whatever details you need. And as you said, deadline is already coming. It's going to be mid-April.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dandjinou, for joining us and also sharing the insights about the significance of the initiative. We are hoping to see more initiatives and strategies that is going to develop Africa's digital system.